Welcome, guys. Let's get started. This is going to be real good. I'm super excited to show you this. This is a presentation on a particular project presented by United Works LLC. And this permaculture project, designed by Haven Permaculture, is known as Lulus Garden. Lulus Garden is really a unique personal project of mine. It is, of course, sponsored and through my company and organization, United Works LLC. But I've actually handled this through Haven Permaculture, my personal design services. In everything that we do with Haven Permaculture, I focus entirely on the 3 core ethics of permaculture design and the 12 principles that are meant and built and identified to guide that permaculture design. And if you feel like you need to pause the slide here and just read through that, if you feel free, absolutely. You might find a couple slides where you can pause and skim through those things. My organization is United Works LLC. Everything that we do, we focus on life, love, and legacy. That's really the bullet points of why we do what we do and choose to foster the things that we do. But a little bit about us is as a company and especially as the purposes of Lulus Garden is to empower families and communities to foster whole systems thinking. This demonstration site is meant to further drive ethical and principle-based family independence, and our whole company is founded on these principles as well. We really believe in self-sufficiency and family self-reliance, and we don't believe that that is easily achieved or completely achieved even for the most financially or materialistically well-off individuals unless we have a self-perpetuating system on the property itself. Grid tied versus grid dependence, right? Preserving and maintaining individual rights across America through innovative construction, landscaping, and contracting is how we do what we do. And we do all of those things also through the permaculture design avenues. And home-based businesses and mentorships, DIYs, and professional food forest implementation, and property and business collaboration are all involved with this particular project at Lulus Garden. By closing the loop one property at a time and leveraging ethical regenerative farming and gardening methods, we help families thrive and businesses grow holistically and nurture a family-first mindset. That's really critical to us as an organization. We make health, wellness, and abundance accessible at every scale through permaculture design. I really feel personally that permaculture design is that ticket to the solutions that we've been looking for. Professional trade work is where I come from as a contractor, and my history in mechanics and landscaping. And personal development. That is where I got my upbringing, was through personal development and all of my personal education. And so it's really important for me personally, and also as a company, to ensure that at least all of these avenues are available or made available through our permaculture designs. And we aim as a company to help families and individuals meet every need from within their own property itself. That's the core bullet point. Our vision is a food forest in every yard and a mentor in every home. And you can go ahead and email us to get involved or learn more about what we're doing and how we're doing it. I will show you that email here in the next slide, where I'm gonna give you a real brief breakdown of who I am, so you kind of know who you're talking to. My name is Jamon. I'm the founder and CEO of United Works LLC and all of its subsidiaries, Lulus Garden and the Mentors Coalition. I'm also the lead designer of Haven Permaculture Design Services and a personal development mentor, a public speaker, and podcaster at the Dissecting Life podcast. I've done many things in my life. I've been known as a jack of all trades, but I really find my passion and purpose in nature. And that's really why we're doing what we're doing today. So as I said, we have a family-first mindset, and that comes from a place of stewardship. For me personally, I feel like my family is priority one. And I want them to understand that their properties and their livelihoods and the things that we do come from a place of our responsibility and stewardship of those things that we have, one another even, right? Our stewardship of our younger brothers, my stewardship of my children, these things. This is my beautiful wife, Rihanna Mishlevic. She's an absolute doll. I adore her. And my 4 little boys up there that are the oldest of the 5. And my little guy, Lyndon, down here, our newest little baby. Kind of cookie cutter copies of myself. I absolutely adore these little guys. This was the day we were playing here at Lulus Garden. That's Lulus Garden in the background of the photo with the boys. Lulus Garden is, as I said, a United Works permaculture project. That means we focus on people care, earth care, and future care. And the purpose of specifically a highlight here is that we are showing folks how to design, develop, and then we'll demonstrate and educate from the property. And that's really the bottom line goal of what we're doing. So Lulu's Garden is the design itself is meant to be a grid-tied, off-grid capable urban community food forest. We're going to Airbnb the property with a sustainable business and community influence and support model built into the property and design itself. And as I said, this is a permaculture designed by myself, Jamon, through my personal design services, Haven Permaculture. Now, as we move forward from the rest of this project and we dive into the details of Lulu's Garden, I want you to keep an eye on these permaculture principles and these ethics and see if you can identify where they are. I do not highlight every single one of them, but I promise you they are all present. Now, again, we design for life, love, and legacy. Everything that we do involves these core philosophies. We want to provide for an abundant and holistic and healthful, loving life. And then we want to have and love and give this love and support through mentorship and care. And we want to, of course, incorporate our life here on earth and our earth that we have and our love and camaraderie and community together with a holistic and morally guided leadership that so we can leave a legacy behind and give an influence that can help the future generations and really help to prosper and move forward one generation at a time. Now, Lulu's Garden property design detail is pretty intensive, and so I'm not going to highlight everything. So if you could pause the slide right here and skim through those things if you would like to learn a little bit more about Lulu's Garden. Now, Lulu's Garden, the project purpose and mission is to design, build, and establish a closed-loop, self-sufficient landscape in an urban demonstration to regenerate strong native ecosystems and develop ecologically, economically, and spiritually productive and safe human habitats for community and culture. We do that through micro-scale regenerative agriculture and permaculture design sciences and sustainable construction technologies. Now, my personal favorite is we seek to preserve freedom and agency at all levels of life and within all stages of it from within the property itself. Personally, I have this individual vision where I really imagine all of the countries in the world being built on these paradigms and philosophies of closed loop, self-sufficient, free agency properties, where all of the needs and the resources and the means can be met from within the bounds of the property itself, put the power back into the people's hands. And that's how you create a free culture. That's where freedom stems from, is the home, right? Project and design is specifically aims to produce a closed loop, self-sustaining ecosystem. So a self-sustaining ecosystem through agroforestry. We of course support it with modern technology and some low-tech permaculture methods such as hugelkultur or heavy mulch, rain basins, or groundwater, wind and solar capture. But ultimately that's the intention. It's a closed loop, self-sustaining ecosystem. The south lot of the property provides a back-to-Eden style garden watered solely by rain and ground runoff, and the planting plan contains various levels of guild systems and incorporates existing native tree species, such as the elm, oak, and mulberry, and maple, which are already on the property, identified in the diagnosis. Dwarf fruit trees, grapevines, elderberry, strawberry, herbs, and other perennials are found throughout constructed in guild systems, and we've interconnected them to help aid and form a mycorrhizal network. Property-wide. We don't have much break in the wood chip. We do that intentionally to let that mycorrhizal connect property-wide. And we always use a no-till method. We don't till anything in our properties and any of our personal projects, and even in my client projects, if I can help it. And we specifically focus on fruit trees in this design because that's really where we feel like the perennial stance comes from. Fruit trees are really a critical aspect in agroforestry, and I don't think that you could get far away from trees in any form of regenerative model. A passive solar greenhouse it kind of doubles as a community and a gazebo center. Inside that greenhouse, we have a cob oven and fire pit, and that's located in the northern yard. And the reason we do that is so that we have an atmosphere and a place to connect with our locals and our neighbors and our families. The property diagnosis identified 27 fruit trees and 23 berry bushes and the 30 by 90 back to Eden style garden and 9 grapevines, raspberries, and elderberries, all between echinacea, black-eyed Susan, and various other perennial herbs and flowers. Those were planted somewhat by me, and some of those things were already native on the property. But by the time we did the diagnosis, that is where the property was. Pollinators are included as horizontal beehives. The horizontal beehive model focuses on the health of the hive over the production of honey, which to me is a no-brainer. We have 2 hive locations identified and are located on opposite corners of the property, on the southeast side and the northwest corners. So without further ado, let's get into the details here. So Lulus Garden has the design scope itself always includes, for what we do, and particularly this project, a LLC business model. And of course, we've named that Lulus Garden for this project. We do that through the parent umbrella company known as United Works LLC, as I discussed it earlier. And the property business offers products, services, and education profitably. Not just for free give-outs and whatnot, but so that there's a profitable surplus on the property. And some of the products and services are listed here. You can pause the slide here if you would like to learn a little bit more about what we offer from Lulus Garden. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going here, so we can get into the details. So without further ado, here is Lulus Garden. Now, so Lulus Garden is based in hot and humid northern Missouri, where the soil is black gold, and whether I like it or not, the plants just grow. Sometimes I can get them to not, and sometimes I just let nature do its thing, depending on what it is, right? My big ambition is to help usher in true independence through addressing the most basic need of human life: food, water, and shelter, and of course wellness at the community level, but from the property itself. I think this is how we achieve a more global level of self-sufficiency. Lulus Garden is meant to serve as a showcase home in and for local influence. So we do this at a local level, and specifically to have a local influence. The home will be left vacant of any permanent inhabitants. Nobody will live in the home full time. And we do that so that it aligns better with the design intentions and the business plan for the property. And of course, the community influence. We can bring groups in and have events with local youth groups and activities, church groups, other things like that, without somebody living there and having that space occupied. Due to its central location in the heart of the country, Missouri actually has a really reliable, humid continental climate. This translates to hot summers and cold winters with 4 distinct seasons and extreme temperatures fluctuations. We just got out of some really cold weather today. Yesterday it was 80 degrees. In a couple of days here, we're gonna have snow again. Missouri's no crazy. All of Missouri experiences freezing temperatures every year, and it's not out of the ordinary to drop below 0 out here. Lulus Garden sits in small town Trenton in northern Missouri, Grundy County. And Missouri soil, before we get too far into here, is actually Minfro, which is a new soil type to me prior to me moving here to Missouri. It is known as a deep, well-drained, and moderately permeable clay-rich forest soil. The soil surface is rich in decaying matter, and the clay is easily found everywhere across Missouri. You can dig down about a foot in some places, especially at our Faith Havens property. You can go down probably 2 feet, even maybe 3 in the right locations before you hit that clay. Lots of topsoil, but clay is pretty prevalent in our area. Trenton is centered around big agriculture fields. There's rivers, lakes, and ponds and streams and rolling hills all throughout Missouri. But the obvious effects of the big agriculture tillage and just modern agricultural methods can be spotted even just looking at this map right here, right now. Lulus Garden sits on the northern end of Trenton, Missouri. So it is above the floodplains where it is, and it is a good distance away from those agricultural fields because it is in city limits. And the trees and neighboring properties all have a pretty good separation between any noise factors or wind from chemical blow by or any kind of other influences from those agricultural fields. An active train track does pass nearby, and it's not too loud thanks to the neighboring landscapes. There is a good level of noise reduction, but we will consider that in the location. Also, despite being so close to that noise source there, the train tracks, which is active, the loudest noise factors are neighbors. We have a good level of mechanicking in Trenton, Missouri, and most folks have a garage and like to tinker, and so you'll hear different types of power tools and equipment going periodically. So we'll factor that into the design as well. The property lot takes up a little over half the city block and boasts old trees and rich black soils throughout the property. The runoff is actually diverted by street ditches and a center block ditch separating easterly neighboring properties right behind the house in the middle block. So some of the key takeaways from what I just showed you: large lot size allows for increase in the urban design scope. Most urban homes, especially that I'm familiar with, have a much smaller lot. This is 0.87 acres. Local area community is agriculturally minded. That's important. Native soil and climate is great for growing diverse yields, and community influence can be a successful core design intention because it's agriculturally minded. Climate provides good water supply for self-stable gardening methods, and such as the back-to-eating garden and the roof stout method and the hugelkultur methods, which we will show you a little bit later as we get into the design here. Wide variety of fruits and veggies and herbs are all native to our area and to Missouri as a whole, really. There is tons of edible foods and herbs in Missouri. But the core design influence is because the modern agriculture practices prevail historically and statewide. We want to keep a good eye on how that affects and influences our property through those modern methods. Now, this is just a quick breakdown of how we've observed and interacted with the property over the last 3 years. In 2019, we purchased the property. In 2020, we sat back and looked at it and said, oh, what would it look like in 10 years if we left it untouched? What does nature want this property to be? And that's really where we began the design process from. In 2021, the final design was finally rendered. That's what I'm showing you today. And we've restored quite a bit of beneficial native vegetation and regenerated heaps of soil across the property through those methods I've already identified. And we're really quite excited to see where the property can go from here in 2022, this coming up season. It's March today, so it's going to be a good season getting started here. I'm actually prepping seeds as we speak. So the property is 0.87 acres, edge to edge. It has, as I said, mature oak, mulberry, maple, elm, and some honeysuckle throughout. The home is a 4-bed and 2-bath, 1,800 square foot home. It does have a bonus room we use as an office. And the property faces west toward the driveway end there. The topography slopes northeast to the corner lot where we have a shop identified, and a high corner in southwest boundary where the garden sits already, existing garden during the diagnosis. And then the low corner in northeast boundary where the shop will exist is where we try to funnel the water through so that we can capture that, which in my mind is a little bit contrary to the method of keeping your homes out of the way of water, but we have a use for that. The area analysis included a drainage ditch in the far east boundary and road access on west and north boundaries, and neighboring yards on the south and east boundaries. The heavy runoff across the west driveway does come through and hit those raised beds that we'll identify in the design. There's a hot microclimate on the southern yard and a cold microclimate on the northern yard, thanks to all of the trees and of course because it's on the northern yard. The area analysis continued this over the next winter season, and we were less involved with the vegetation and more involved with what we would see the neighbors and the properties and be able to see through vegetation, right? We noticed more increase in noise on the west, south, and eastern boundaries than anywhere else. The prevailing wind came from the south and the southwest in the winter, and the in the summer, and then the northwest in the winter. The potential hazards that we identified were neighboring dogs, cats, and kids. Downhill sloping road in front of the house has a habit of encouraging fast traffic on the western boundary. The wind and street runoff carry trash and chemicals to the property through the ditches and through the wind. The city government limits business transactions and functions from within our residential zone. So that was a little bit of a hiccup on how we wanted to do business in this property. No alternative water, power, sewer source to city utilities. And the cold winters penetrate poor insulation and leaky windows and doors in the home itself. So it does need some restoration. There are plenty of wasps, ants, and bats and other insects inhabiting the attic and the crawl space. And so we have had to do a little bit of remediation in that sense. But we don't like chemicals. And so we steer clear of those things completely in the way that we've handled that. The city utilities are extremely expensive in Trenton, Missouri, so it is a core intention to get away from them completely. The moisture present in the basement affects the way that the whole bottom layer of the property is utilized, the whole basement layer. We really need to have some more remediation and construction in that zone particularly. So we're getting into zones and sectors here. So this is how the property sits, right? Northeast, south, and west. The western being the front yard, technically speaking. The property slopes diagonally to the northeast, and that is also where the water goes because of the slope. The noise and privacy factors are outlined as shown, and the neighboring properties are really where we pull that influence from. The closest windrows that we could find for climatic information was actually Cameron, and so we did adjust a little bit to meet this particular microclimate in Trenton, Missouri. But here is that data to show kind of a relevance of why we're using it and how that looks on our particular property. So you spin that around to match the layout of the property, and this is what we get. The cold northern winds come from the northwestern ends, and the warm southern winds come from the southwestern edge. We really don't get a lot of wind from the east out here. This particular property is pretty blockaded on that side, thanks to trees and other homes. Sun, of course, moves east to west, and it hits and permeates through the vegetation on the first established garden on the property. And it's really important that we identify the water flow. This design has done so through just general highlighting, and we'll get into that now. So the groundwater flows from southwest and northeast across the property. There are ditches lining the outer edges and perimeters of the property between the roads and the yards, but for the most part, it is all creeping across the property at one point or another. And we do our best to capture the runoff on all of these rooftops that will be or are currently already on the property. So that we are not wasting one drop of rain. We want to capture as much of that as humanly possible. The water is controlled by the natural contours of the property. There's not much. It's pretty evenly sloped across the landscape. We use mulches to soak that up, such as wood chips and catchment basins. Have city gutters, ditches, and minimal soil disturbance throughout the drain, with some drainage channels that we've included. And those are all highlighted below. You can see, especially on the western front boundary where there's raised beds, the water creeps across the driveway there, and we have it going into a drainage ditch rather than resloping the whole driveway. And we've plumbed that out so that it goes right across the yard rather than continuing with the city ditch and avoiding the yard completely. So that was another way that we captured water. Now, the design analysis of why we did what we did, we're going to jump into a bit and just real quickly and briefly show you how we laid everything out. So we have rain catchment through barrels throughout the entire property so that we have all of the rooftops providing us with clean, potable water. We have raised beds in the central locations around the property for herb gardens or community gardens or just our general vegetation. The greenhouse is located in 3 different places on this property. The southern gazebo is actually, or I'm so sorry, southern greenhouse is actually attached to the house itself. So you can actually walk through the hallway into that greenhouse and have year-round food produced there. The other 2 greenhouses serve as either community areas that double as greenhouses, or fruit trees or tool storage that double as greenhouse as well. So they are multifunction. The perennial garden is actually stretched throughout the entire property. The property itself is meant to be designed as a total food forest, but these areas specifically focus on perennial plants superiorly to the other areas of the property. The Back to Eden style garden is located on the southern side here, identified by what looks like wood chips on the map. That is already generally established and laid out as shown. The shop and garage, one garage attached to the house for winter use and for vehicle storage and other things of that nature. And then the shop actually produces raised garden beds. And we build surplus in that shop and handle surplus from the property in that shop. The schoolhouse identified there is actually meant to serve as a pass-through for permaculture design up on the walls. This particular design I'm showing you now will be printed, laminated, and on the wall there. And we will use that as kind of a holding point during the tours property-wide to educate youth and to show our kids especially and families what's possible by scattering that room and that schoolhouse with permaculture education and sciences of all different types, from ecology to geography. The chicken run is placed underneath mulberry trees so that the mulberries will fall to the chickens automatically and kind of self-feeding them. And then we also capture the rainwater and the compost from the chicken's surplus there. And we have a lining along the edges of the chicken run vegetation for them to eat freely, pick at bugs off of or whatever they may need. We do get pretty hot here, and so we got them kind of in a shady location. But during the summer months, they receive the sun also because there's no leaves on the vegetation surrounding them. The pond that is identified in the low spot of the property, we've actually decided to put a cistern underneath, and then coming up from the cistern, we'll decorate as a pond with a little bridge over the top and employ some fish for a small aquaponics demonstration. And that way we are capturing in a cistern, but also beautifying the space, because that really is our meditative zone over there. And that's where we'll have some community gatherings. There is an old cut down tree on this corner of the property where the previous owners had chopped down everything except for the main branches and left it standing real tall, almost over the neighboring canopies. We have decided that since we wanted a ham radio on the property for emergency communications, we would utilize that space for an antenna and get away with a little bit higher elevation than our local laws might permit otherwise. The cob oven and fire pit inside the dome is for our community influence and gathering location. And then we have solar locations identified property-wide so that we have a good connection to utilizing all that solar energy rather than it just hitting our bare shingles and being bounced off or unutilized. We want to capture that energy. The micro turbines are what's known as hydroelectric. And so we're actually going to put them in the gutters. We're going to put them in the runoff tubes underground and in various different places. Micro turbines don't produce a lot of power, but when you're trying to be off-grid, grid-tied capable, it really, every watt counts. And so we've identified some places that we can get those micro turbines to be functional for us. Now, the property is actually laid out in a way that we can do demonstration tours because we really do want to help influence the community toward permaculture design. And so this demonstration tour begins in the garden, the Back to Eden style garden, tours up through the greenhouse and then moves around through the hugel beds, under the ham radio tower, through that greenhouse there, to the schoolhouse, through the chicken coop, all the way back around where we'll have a small gathering near the fire pit and cob oven, crossing the pond, and then the demonstration on the annual plants that will be in the western raised bed garden there by the road, which is the free public access year round, and then ending indoors where we actually have a clear open floor plan intended specifically for this purpose. Now, the zones of the property have been identified as such. Zone 0 is the home, Zone 1 is the front and the backyards, the most active and utilized areas of the property. Zone 2 is the further out there edges of the gardens and the garden shop or garden shed. And then Zone 3 being the gathering zone where we really don't go very often, but we do those events maybe monthly or bi-weekly, give or take, Zone 4 is where our beehive is kept, and so we really only access that when we're harvesting those a few fruits that are lining around the gazebo or tending to the beehive. And then Zone 5, we really never go back there. That whole back stretch is going to be designed specifically with some privacy border there, bamboo and other harvestable crop. But there's nothing for us really to do on that side of the property compared to the rest of the property. And so that is our observe and interact zone. And then it is outlined as followed, and you can pause it here to identify those yourselves. So Lulus Garden, again, as a whole, is a very community-centered project meant to be an urban community food forest. And this is the specific design, the final rendering, and you are more than encouraged to pause here and read through all of the key components. Our problem here that we wanted to solve was that it's toxic, unhealthy, and nutritionally dead, expensive foods being farmed and delivered in unethical ways. That really is the bottom line that we want to affect. And I mean, everything from the toxicity to nutrient depletion, and especially highlighted in our specific area where agriculturally productive zones are all around us. We wanted to help show a more regenerative model. We believe the solution is a food forest in every yard. So we do that through ecosystem-based design. So these are all pictures from the property that I'm about to show you. We of course have this philosophy to stop fighting nature. Nature has been growing by itself for generations. I mean, it's since the dawn of time, right? It's survived every major apocalypse ever known to man and every extinction level event in history, yet it's still here. And that to me means it's going to do its job a lot better than I will. So I'm going to do my best to let it do its job with the vegetation that I need to survive, because that's what it does. It helps provide life. Now, the health and wellness first mindset includes, of course, self-sustaining, and this ability to be self-sustaining is really a factor that we can't underestimate, we can't underexplore. If an element is not self-sustaining, I believe we designed it wrong. And we do that a lot through mulch. So this is the mulch from our property, pictured in the upper left corner. It's a no-till method called the back-to-Eden method. We've had tremendous success. That soil that is pictured there was hard clay when we started this in 2020, and since then has become nice black, rich soil with good moisture retention. And we really want to maintain the water that comes across this property, and wood chips do a great job at that. We have intentional species selected. We really want to focus on the nutritional varieties of food, and we bring in pollinators for a natural workforce. Let the bugs and the bees and the birds do the job for us. And then, of course, we really like to have specific varieties that produce a lot, not just what you find in a grocery store, but abundant varieties. And then we incorporate a series of things specifically for pest prevention, such as onion or garlic. And then with this same method of mind, we have a tactical ecology that we approach our whole property with. And again, all of these photos are from the garden itself. We have vining varieties to utilize upward space and climbing trees and other vertical growing methods. We have pollinator species that bring in beneficial insects and encourage pollination between vegetation we want to increase yields for. The problem-fixing varieties, that's plantain pictured there. We have ticks and chiggers in Missouri, and so plantain is a good deterrent for those, and we let that self-seed across the property. Soil to canopy is our philosophy. So it goes from the root crops all the way to the upper nut crops, the upper canopies. If we are designing at every level within those bounds, we will be successful in our attempt of mimicking the forest and achieving a yield. This picture here is the entrance to Lulus Garden. This is where the tour will start. Oops, let me go back here. Skip a slide. We have an intentional scale. So the way that we view the property here is from the macro to the micro. right? We design from patterns to details. And so we are looking at the nation that we live in. Our country is the United States. So we look at that nation and we see that the climates and the microclimates and the greater watersheds and all of the influences that it has as an ecology and as a climate, excuse me. And then we design down from there, honing in one layer at a time to the microclimate that we live in here. And that's how we've been able to have these kinds of results. So this whole systems thinking is applied in this image and applied in the property design as a whole. And I'll show you some of that now. So this is herbal. If you don't know what herbal is, I encourage you to Google that, but we have 3 herbal mounds right here that have all been self-sustaining, utilizing the microclimates and capturing the sun from the area above, just between canopies. And you can tell that even though there was some shade casted on portions of this area of land, we are still receiving prolific yields. And this was taken at a time when all of those yields were green, but the plants there are just chock full of fruit. And of course, we apply a polyculture method. So there's never just one variety in any of our planting locations. We do recycle as much material as possible. This raised bed was built as a demonstration. We don't build the rest of our raised beds this way, but this particular one we did with pallet wood. The intention was to use free seeds, free soil, free mulch, free wood, and free hugelculture on the inside to demonstrate that you could have free food. And so everything grown and everything pictured in that image was 100% free to us. We did not pay $1 for any of that. And I do not know of anybody else that did, except maybe the company that paid for the pallet that we tore apart. Now, the vertical growing aspect of our property is really critical. We utilize all of the upward space as possible, especially to increase that food forest atmosphere. This is a meditative zone that we've built into the property, known as the grapevine trellis, with a bench below it. And nothing on the property is treated. We don't use treated lumber, but this particular structure here was built with, what's it called? A lumber store wood product. And so we used rough lumber on every other part of the property, but this particular structure we did not. And through the property, we do our best to demonstrate the different growing methods. We have row crops, we have guild crops, we have all kinds of different varieties. This is my wife planting peppers in rows to show and demonstrate how that was done. And we videoed that whole process to explain how to get through the wood chips and plant in the soil below. And then we were harvesting cayenne all summer long. It was crazy prolific. That we do value the native species. This is a gigantic oak tree that is off to the corner of the lot, and it has been providing surplus of oak sprouts property-wide since we moved in. The squirrels are our personal little workforce. They come up here, they grab the acorns, and then they plant them in the wood chips. They sprout, and then because the wood chips let the soil remain so porous and fertile, we can just grab those with fingertips and pull them right back out. But we don't want to waste that resource either. So we have decided that this season will be the first season where we offer oak tree saplings, and our personal little workforce is going to be sprouting those for us. Squirrel handled. That'll be a good slogan for offering the product. So we have surplus and income in all that we do. In the shop, we build surplus and supplies such as raised garden beds, handling soils, different things, wood chips, sorts, things like that. And so in the design, when that shop is built, that is what it will be done. This inside that shop there. But for now, we've been building this just in the yard, in the driveway, in different locations. And these are the raised beds that we build at Lulus Garden. Just one. We have 3 different varieties that we build. And as I said, we are high believers in surplus. And so from indoors, we have networked with other locals and other family members and things to pull together these medicinal seed packets. We are exclusive on this product, and nobody else in the world offers this product except for us. It's completely custom compiled, and we have this available through Lulus Garden now and have for the last 6 months or so. The method of planting that we employ is everything from polyculture to companion planting, and we demonstrate it in guilds. You can see here there is some spearmint in the back of this section where we've got some melons, and then there's some ground ivy creeping up. We don't discriminate between what grows in our gardens. We really try to be resourceful. This is when we started the garden. The pictures I just showed you, this is how it began. We called local arborists to dump and deliver when they could, and they did several times for us. In the beginning, testing the soil, we planted 2 raised beds and lined them with wood to encourage mycorrhizal fungi. And although those 2 garden beds is just all we had at the time, and so that's what we did. But we were willing to do the hard work. And that picture there on the right is me headed down to a local landfill and self-shoveling one at a time scoops into the back of my truck of wood chips so that we could continue this, because we couldn't get anything from the arborist. It was taking us a long time and the season was moving. And so I took it upon myself to be willing to travel that extra 35 minutes to the landfill, grab those, and then come back and do that multiple times until I had the wood chips that we needed. And that willingness has served us. We've had a lot of small and simple solutions, small and slow. It took us a while, but it did work out. Eventually, the arborist began to deliver more frequently, and we were able to spread it across the whole garden. And our truck was able to keep up with the other portions of the yard. And that bottom right photo you see is real results that was taken just last summer. And again, encouraging diversity and ecology for a good sustainable base is important. In monocultures, the plants release pheromones and encourage pests. The pests from all around smell your monoculture crop, and then they come in and to seeking to balance that ecology. And so we avoid that by incorporating diversified ecology and polyculture methods and guilds and things of that nature. And we don't have pest problems with very little interference from pests. We of course have a family first mindset, and so in everything that we build and do, we include our little guys. That's them painting. Not painting. Linseed oiling, one of the first garden beds that we built. That one pictured in the bottom. Our philosophy is do it and record how it went, and then duplicate it for success. And that is what we've done with this garden bed, and that's how we've demonstrated that perpetual motion. And our company follows the same business model: do, record, duplicate. This is really how we feel the world should be moving, how communities can get involved, and how individuals and businesses can network and collaborate and form coalitions one with another for mentorship and progress under ethical leadership. So in 2020, that's how we started, and that same location in 2022, actually facing the opposite direction in 2021, is depicted here. So before and after of the properties. This is how we started in 2020, and this is what it looked like just last summer. So we do have quite a bit of progress on this property. So thank you so much for spending the time with me today to go over all of this. I did cover quite a bit, a little bit longer than I intended it to be, but this is Lulus Garden. This is our personal family's project, and a first of the company, Lulus Garden's owned property. If you have any questions or you would like to help us get this project moving, and we are looking for connections, resources, and abilities. So if you want to submit any proposals, legal advice, or opportunities, investment opportunities, anything of that nature, please reach out to Jamon at havenpermaculture.com and we'll get connected. Thank you very much.